Everybody, and welcome to the Schatz and Tanier NFL podcast. Different bat time, same bat station. I'm Aaron Schatz of FTN Network, ftnfantasy.com/DVOA, and he is Mike Tanier of themessenger.com. And if you are watching us live, thank you very much. Normally we are on YouTube at 11 a.m. Eastern time, but today 5 p.m. because I had some other responsibilities. But we are here to talk about Week 7 in the NFL. If you are watching us live, we'll take your questions and comments. But otherwise, we're going to get right into this week's games. Let's start at 1 p.m. with the Detroit Lions at the Baltimore Ravens. The Lions are basically in the playoffs by our, like, even if they lose, we have them at 98% of simulations.
Wow.
Ravens 88.5 if they win, 60% if they lose. I mean, the Lions are number 2 now in DVOA. Mm-hmm. And think of who the other 3 teams think about how far ahead they are of the other 3 teams in the division. No one else in the division has a winning record.
And you mentioned on the last podcast, and I looked up, I believe they have the 5th easiest or 6th easiest schedule in the NFL.
Brian Knowles says, amazing what being good in a terrible division will do for your playoff odds. Yeah, I mean, the Lions are basically in at this point.
Here, what do you think of this? They're plus 300 to get the number 1 seed in the NFC.
I think that's actually a good bet.
Yeah.
I think that's a reasonable bet because I know San Francisco is better. Mm-hmm. I don't know if Philadelphia is better.
It's hard to say.
And the schedule strength favors Detroit.
Right.
Absolutely.
The Eagles play the 49ers, Bills, Dolphins on Sunday. We'll talk about that in a minute. I think the 1985 Bears and 2007 Patriots are on their schedule coming up. 49ers don't have an easy road. And, folks, look at the Lions' schedule. Past this game, this is a tough one, but look past this game.
Yeah, I mean, this is number 2 Detroit overall in DVOA. Baltimore is number 6 overall in DVOA. Mm-hmm. Every unit in this game has been good, except the Baltimore pass offense, which has been average. We expected it to be much better this year with the new offensive coordinator, Todd Monken. It has not been better this year. A lot of dropped passes. Odell Beckham did not turn out to be really the Odell Beckham of old, I don't think. But yet, despite what I said about all the units being above average and the Lions being number 2 in DVOA, the Ravens are favored in this game.
Yes.
In fact, the line moved towards the Ravens. It was originally Ravens by 2.5, and it's moved to Ravens by 3.
That is surprising. And by the way, can you hear that?
Yeah.
This is like that scene in Goodfellas where they're chasing Henry Hill down.
I was like, are you getting a Blue Angels flyover? What is going on?
The Phils are on the road, so we should not be getting that. Is that correct? I live very close to the link into Citibank Park.
Jared Goff is 2nd in DVOA on deep passes this year, but the Baltimore defense is number 1 against deep passes. So that's an interesting strength against strength.
Right.
The Lions offense is better without a blitz, although Goff was interestingly better with blitzes in 2022. That kind of stuff is surprisingly inconsistent from year to year.
It is, and I was looking for it because Goff has been having this phenomenal year. I started doing the Goff litmus tests, and one of them is the pressure rate numbers, and his pressure rate numbers are fine. It's not like he leads the league or anything, but it's not like he's 32nd in the league when he's under pressure. He's been doing pretty well in those situations.
I mean, the way I feel about it is we keep talking about Tua and Brock Purdy. Goff is part of the same conversation.
Yes.
Right? Helped by scheme, questions about his ability outside of structure. So how good is he compared to other quarterbacks who have as much value as he does this year? Because he has a lot of value. That he has been very productive.
The difference being he doesn't have as strong a supporting cast up and down.
As either Tua or Purdy, correct?
Right, and he has a longer track record of being able to do this sort of thing. Always remind people, hey, remember, he helped the team get to the Super Bowl.
He did.
Yeah, this is a thing. So, like, we know within these structures he can accomplish these things. We're still learning that about these other guys.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting because I'm very high on the Ravens,
Right.
right? Um, like the thing that's not going well for them this year is, other than the passing game, is special teams. But that will get righted because
Right.
teams are always good. And yet at the same time, I feel like I jumped on the line when it was 2.5. I'm kind of kicking myself now because I would rather have Detroit +3 than Detroit +2.5. I'm just kind of amazed that this game is not like a -1 or even a pick 'em, even though the game is in Baltimore. I just feel like Detroit. I guess people are still waiting for Detroit to prove themselves.
I know. It seems like that's a public or the market being behind what we're seeing on the field right now. And we can talk about drop passes, and that was certainly a case, especially in the Steelers game. The Ravens are only 4th in drop pass rate. So it's not like this is some historical thing. Someone asked me about it. I wrote about it in the Messenger mailbag. It's not this historically bad thing. The Cowboys have a worse drop rate. The Chiefs do. I don't think that should be shocking. So, there's more to it than just some drop passes. It doesn't make the Ravens bad, but it might mean that they're not at this level that we expect them to be at.
It's interesting because I wonder if like Jack Campbell, the rookie linebacker, plays a big role in this game because of, they've got a good pass rush in Detroit, but we know that Jackson can get away from that.
Yeah.
So they need linebackers who can take him down when he scrambles. I wonder if he's going to play a nice role in this.
Also, you got somebody who has to run with Andrews up the seam, and I think that sometimes will be.
Is Branch healthy at this point? I can't remember whether the rookie nickel cornerback.
Why do I want to say no, but I think I have an injury report right here. I want to point out also that there are a lot of injured running backs for the Detroit Lions. They're waiting for Jahmyr Gibbs to come back. They think he's going to be back in this game, but Montgomery is out. They're down to kind of not having a traditional running back right now, which again,
which I feel kind of like, but Craig Reynolds going to play. I mean, he's a running back.
I guess it's Craig Reynolds there. I mean, that's your guy at this point. Montgomery is out. Brian Branch was limited in practice, so that's where we're at with him.
Useful asks if Baltimore coming off playing in England is coloring people's betting leanings. But wouldn't that make people against Baltimore? Right? Wouldn't it? The idea that they might be jet lagged coming back from England would make Baltimore less of a pick, not more of. It wouldn't have the line moving towards Baltimore. I would think it'd have the line moving away from Baltimore.
I would agree. And, remember, London to Buffalo is much further than London to Baltimore.
So, I think I've made it clear how I feel about picking this game. To me, it's Detroit is the better team. Detroit is the better team, and I like Detroit +3.
I am more worried about the running back situation than you, since I think I see them putting receivers in the backfield in the last game, and that gets a little weird at that point. But I still like the Lions, and it's just the level of trust with the Ravens right now is very, very low, because if it's not one thing, it's another that cost them a couple games early in the season.
Yeah. All right, next game we want to talk about is the most important game for playoff odds, and that is the Atlanta Falcons at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Falcons make the playoffs in 60% of sims if they win and 29% if they lose. Buccaneers, 60% if they win and 28% if they lose. So basically, your playoff chances are double if you win this game than if you lose this game. The Buccaneers should pass a lot. The Falcons are 29th in defense against the pass, but have excellent run defense this year, and the Buccaneers have a terrible running game. Oh, just to go back to the Lions, by the way, ONF says that according to FanDuel, 77% of money is on the Lions. So we'll see who's smarter, Vegas or me. Because I think the Lions +3 is a pretty easy bet, but obviously they made the line because they think that that's the most likely line to win the money. So,
Then the
people are on the Lions. Yeah. What do you think about Atlanta? How are you feeling about Atlanta and Tampa Bay?
I don't want to think about it. I don't care about it. I hate it. But I know you've got – come on. I know you've got some stats about the two-back attack.
Yes. So the Falcons were going to revolutionize the game with the pony personnel because Bijan Robinson was so much more than a running back.
Yes.
They have -32% DVOA with two running backs on the field, 4.3 yards per play.
Now I'm going to back you up. You got two running backs. Is it always those guys, or you got Keith Smith and?
No, it's any two running backs, including if it's a fullback, including if it's Cordarrelle Patterson. Any two guys who are running backs count as two running backs for this. I'm not looking strictly at when it's Algier and Robinson, but that's mostly Algier and Robinson.
It's often them. They do use the fullback sometimes. There's been very little Patterson. I pulled some of the more detailed stuff up for this. So this is all with two running backs on the field, but it could be Keith Smith at fullback, etc. So Bijan averages 5.7 yards per rush. That's good. 32 carries. Algier, 2.7 yards per rush on 38 carries.
Okay.
6 more carries for Algier. And I'll give you Ritter's numbers. 30 of 54, 325 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and 4 sacks.
So that's with the two running backs on the field.
That's with two running backs on the field. One of his completions, by the way, was the minus 6 yard catch by himself, which was batted back in his face.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things about the two running backs on the field idea is research has shown that running backs are just not as good as receivers.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like you're just, for the most part, you're better off having the reason to have a running back lineup as receiver is to confuse the defense so they use base personnel against you.
Right.
But in reality, it is better to put a receiver at receiver than a running back at receiver, even if that running back is Bijan Robinson.
Now,
even if that running back is Christian McCaffrey.
Right. Well, Bijan as a receiver, 7 of 7 for 40 yards. Now, he does have 2 touchdowns. So there might be a different argument when you're at the 6 yard line and you're trying to break things up or something like that. But beyond that, Kyle Pitts, 3 of 7 for 25 yards. They're going to a lot of dink and dunk tactics. And I'm writing about this, and it is maybe your slot guy should be a slot guy. Maybe it should be a slot guy. And then Bijan can be in the backfield instead of Algier. Oh, God.
Yeah. Bill Houston wants to know, does Mike consider this year's version of the Falcons watchable? And should the Falcons trade Kyle Pitts to a team that will use him?
I'm starting to think the second part first, that Kyle Pitts is just a pumped up wide receiver. That he's just a bigger Kendrick Bourne. And that he's not this guy that we thought he was going to be. Okay. Because he's not a particularly good blocker. He's not a really good route runner. He's this mismatched guy from college who, if you put him in the slot, becomes just sort of average to above average. Here is something I wrote that I'm working on right now about my thoughts about the Falcons offense. The Falcons offense is a bacon jalapeno double cheeseburger, pizza cookie dough, ice cream flavored IPA. All right. So that's, I kind of find it interesting. It's a lot better to watch on Tuesday morning, scratching my beard.
It reminds me of the Saturday Night Live sketch where they're like, it's a taco inside a same pizza, inside a pancake, right?
Yeah,
that's the same thing.
That's it. It has all the concepts all the time.
The line is Buccaneers minus 2.5.
Never, ever, ever, ever bet on a Falcons game.
I'm with you. I'm not particularly fond of betting this. If I had to with a gun to my head, I think I would go Falcons plus 2.5 because I just don't believe in Baker Mayfield right now, but
he was kind of okay against the Lions. When you rewatch the game, it was that was actually one of his better games, which is weird.
The system does like going over 37.5 though.
Still not doing it. It sounds tasty, but no.
Browns at Colts. It's another 1:00 game. Browns make the playoffs in 75% of sims where they win, 46% if they lose. Colts, 48% if they win, 21% if they lose. One of the interesting stats I found is the Colts will want to spread out the Browns defense. Even though they're better running than passing, the Colts get 3.7 yards a play against base, but 5.4 yards a play against nickel.
Okay.
Or if you want to look at it as personnel, they have 3.9 yards a play with 12 personnel, but 5.5 yards a play with 11 personnel.
Right.
While the Browns defense, which is better all the time, is better in base than in nickel, even though they're better. They're better. They're great both this year because their defense is the best in the league this year. So that's an interesting idea, is that they want to spread out, but then run.
Right. That's an interesting way of doing things. And they got to do something. I was looking at the base stats of the cornerbacks for the Browns. And they're so amazing. And one of the reasons I had to mess with the sliders, there's so few targets. There are so few targets against these cornerbacks, and of course, and then the target rate, you're completing like 27% of the passes against them. But like they're not going onto the leaderboard because the teams are just not getting the ball off often enough.
Because the pass rush is so good.
Because the pass rush, and that's the scary thing about spreading the field. Of course, you spread the field and hope Minshew would get the ball out quickly, which is
yeah.
Yeah.
Browns are weak against passes in the middle of the field, but can Minshew get it there? Right,
and to whom?
Yeah. Who's the Colts? Pittman can run like dig routes and stuff. Absolutely,
that's true.
Mo Alley Cox and Kylan Granson and the various tight ends they have, and Alec Pierce is more of an outside guy.
Yes, he's a boundary guy. Josh Downs is their slot now, and McKenzie. You don't. I guess they can run like super shallow crosses.
I don't know if Deshaun Watson is playing at this point. You tweeted something this morning like maybe he's never coming back. And is that really such a bad thing for everybody who's not a Browns fan who doesn't like him as a person?
Right. He did practice today. I did like quintuple check, rap sheet, and Mary Kay both confirmed that he was on the field. I don't know if that means he's playing or not, but yes, the Prince of Denmark Hamlet is working his way back, or at least so we think. And yeah, it's an icky situation, but of course it matters to the win-loss record.
The Browns are favored by 2.5.
Yeah, I'm one of the great Minshew skeptics. And the more we're going to see of Minshew, I think the harder it's going to be to hide his limitations. And against that defense, even if we're talking about P.J. Walker again, I think I'm comfortable with the Browns.
You're comfortable with the Browns, even if it's P.J. Walker?
Even if it's P.J. Walker. Walker.
I probably am too.
Yeah.
Let's move to 4 p.m. The Chargers at the Chiefs. This is the most important game for the Super Bowl odds. Chargers make the playoffs 51% of times if they win, 24% if they lose. Chiefs 98.5% if they win, 91% if they lose. But it changes their reach the Super Bowl number from 35 to 26 if they lose. It's interesting. The Chiefs, right, their defense has been pretty good this year, but their run defense has not. It's been weak. But the Chargers running game is weak as well. Bill Houston asks, given that Charles Omenihu returns to the Chiefs this week, do you think this is now the best defense of the Mahomes era?
I think by DVOA,
DVOA, it is, I believe, the best defense of the Chiefs era.
Right. And the eyeball test matter. I mean, this will be a good game to test that a little bit more. But a lot of guys are the same guys from last year who won a Super Bowl, who got better as the year went on. So, like, in terms of reputation and all, you can't necessarily say this or that about them. But, like, they're playing like they played at the end of last season or better, and they were good enough to win a Super Bowl last season. So I'm impressed.
Right. My prior said going into the season, we'd probably see a little regression from their defense, and we haven't. It's been very good. It's top 10 right now. So, but again, they do struggle against the run, but the Chargers have not been able to run. This is also a number that I ran. The Chiefs defense, 9.1% DVOA, 6.3 yards per play without a blitz. Minus 49% DVOA and 3.3 yards per play with a blitz.
Wow.
Spagnuolo's blitzes are working.
Right. And of course, you are blitzing Zach Wilson in a lot of those games. You start looking at some of the quarterbacks you're getting after. I don't know if that's the best plan for Justin Herbert. I'm not sure what Justin Herbert is at this point, of course.
Yeah.
But,
but it's working. I mean, they played Goff, right? And
that's true.
They've played some real quarterbacks. It's not just Zach Wilson.
They played Russ, which you don't know which Russ you're getting, the sort of okay one or the old-fashioned.
Well, yeah, Russ struggled against. Russ has played much better than people realized this year, except that game. That game, he was terrible.
That game, he was terrible. And Herbert has had some trouble with the pass rush, and that offensive line has some trouble dealing with the pass rush and the blitz, particularly late in games, as I think
there were a lot of penalties from the offensive line, I felt, against Dallas. Like, I felt like every time I looked up, somebody from the offensive line was getting a penalty against Dallas.
There were a lot of penalties in that game in general.
No, that's true.
And let's see, they have 35 penalties, but they've only played 5 games. Looks like they're in the middle of the pack there. Let me quick look up holding on them real quick. By penalty, offensive holding, 2023. Kansas City with 9 of them.
Well, they're all like old Jamar Taylor.
They're all tailored in the illegal formations. Chargers with 7 holds. That's kind of middle of the pack. It might have been a dealing with Micah.
Chargers, interestingly enough, Chargers defense is number 3 against tight ends. It never seems to matter against Travis Kelce. Right? Where I was like, Derwin James, and then Kelce goes like 6, 115, 3 against them or something. Like that's what he did in the last game against the Chargers, 6, 115, 3. And against them in 2021, he had a 10, 191, 2. So Kelce always seems to light up the Chargers, no matter what their defense is against tight ends going into that game.
Wow. And it might be a little different against these receivers, but I don't know.
Chiefs -5.5.
You know how close these games have been for a couple of years now.
Yeah, that's a reason I think to maybe pick the Chargers because the games have been close.
Right.
But the Chiefs defense is better than it's been.
Offense isn't quite what it's been.
Pick the Chiefs. I think that 5.5 number is pretty right on. So
yeah, I'd lean Chargers on that because both these teams have been playing a lot of close games. And again, the level at which the Chiefs offense has fallen back a little bit.
Yeah, I think you might be right. That you might Chiefs by 3, Chiefs by 4 might be the ending of this.
If I play it, I'm teasing it in some weird way, though. I'm not sitting there.
Steelers at Rams is another good 4:00 game.
Is it though?
Well, I mean, the Steelers are sort of, everybody feels like they're very meh, but the Rams are like, I don't know what they are. Steelers make the playoffs 63% of Sims if they win, 41% if they lose. Rams 44% if they win, 25% if they lose. This is which is more important, our prior knowledge from before the season or what's happened in the season game.
Right.
Because our prior knowledge before the season said the Rams were terrible and the Steelers were average.
Right.
And what we've actually seen during the season suggests the Rams are average and the Steelers are terrible.
Really?
The Rams are 5th in offensive DVOA. 5th. And
the Steelers are 38th in offensive DVOA?
Something like that. They're like 30th or something. The system likes the Steelers because of the prior knowledge. The Rams are favored by 3.
Okay.
Here's an interesting split. You want to talk about reasons why the Rams are playing better than anyone expected. Akello Witherspoon.
Okay.
The Rams are 22nd against passes to the left, 26th against passes to the middle, and 1st against passes to the right.
Wow.
And Akello Witherspoon. That's Akello Witherspoon on the defensive left, offensive right. And by the way, the cornerback on the other side is Darian Kendrick, who has had legal issues and was arrested this week, and I don't even know if he's going to play.
Yes. I think my last report on him was that he was in the facility or in the building. I've been trying to keep up on that a little bit, but that certainly bears monitoring. TJ Watt appeared on the injury report midweek.
Yes.
And that's certainly worrisome too. And the Rams do have injuries at running back, and I have no conception of who's behind Kyron Williams.
Zach Evans, I believe. Zach Evans will be the starting running back for the Rams. He was like a 6th round pick or something.
Zach Evans. Okay. That's a thing. Another person coming back, and I know no one wants to hear about the Steelers offense, but Deontay Johnson is coming back.
Yes.
And don't laugh because he's sort of the shallow cross, easy completion guy.
He gets open. His like ESPN, when they track all the receiving, even on passes where they don't throw to him, loves him. Those ESPN stats love him.
Right. And we've seen him for years. I think at one point he had a 100-catch season with Roethlisberger. So, that little blip that you might get that takes them from the 38th best offense in the NFL up to 31st or 30th could be a difference in this game.
So, I mean, I'm trying to go with the idea of the priors and still being important at this point of the season. So I think I would say Steelers +3 if I had to pick this game. What is your feeling? It's Rams -3. It's in Los Angeles.
Wait until kickoff, making sure TJ Watt's on the field, then go in Steelers +3. If he is not out there, abort.
Yeah, that sounds right too. Don't bet that one ahead of time because if TJ Watt doesn't play, you do not want to have money on the Steelers.
Yes.
All right, game of the week, 8 p.m. NBC lucked out with this one. Dolphins at Eagles. Dolphins make the playoffs in 95% of the sims when they win and 86% when they lose. Eagles, 98% of the win, 91% if they lose. Number 4 overall in DVOA, Dolphins versus the number 7 overall Eagles. And what's, I think, more important, the number 1 running game, one of the greatest running games of all time, against this year's number 2 run defense.
Wow. What a difference a year makes for the Eagles' run defense.
But but it's the speed. The thing is, do the Eagles have the players to keep up with the speed of the Dolphins running backs? Because the Dolphins are going to cross 3 dudes, and then you're not going to know who the ball's going to, and then someone's going to have a ball, and that guy's going to be really fast, and then
no one does. No one has that speed. And I was rewatching the Bills game, and I'm going to get some information on the Bills game of how they stop it. And the Bills stop it by taking a 31-13 lead and being like, if we give a big play here or there, we're going to be fine, and just kind of holding on, which is not very Bills-like. But they did it in that particular game. And one thing you notice when they do those double reverse plays, they're allowing penetration up the middle. And I've seen guys like Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence whiff when they go up the middle on that, because again, Tyreek is blowing by them or Mostert's blowing by them. I did see Oliver make a play on one of those, but like other guys aren't doing it. For the Eagles, Jalen Carter, if that's the guy, I think he's healthy, he's back, he's coming in, whoever it is. If you get that penetration, you got to trip up that ball carrier, disrupt that play in some way, and not leave it to the defenders on the edge to stop those misdirection plays.
Now, the problem for the Eagles this year is the pass defense. They are 20th in pass defense DVOA, 26th against short passes, and 16th against deep passes. 32nd against tight ends, although that's an okay weakness to have against Miami, because what is like Durham Smythe going to go nuts? No. So, I mean, Miami, we're like running game. I mean, their passing game is awesome. It's Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, right? And then you're so busy covering those guys that then they get it to Craycraft and Berrios. So, do the Eagles have enough with where Devontae Maddox is out, right? Some rookie is playing nickel. It's like, can they cover all the Miami receivers?
He's out. Bradley Roby is out. As somebody we grabbed to put in. I'm trying to look if it's Job again. But what's been happening a lot with the Eagles is they've been putting Bradbury in the slot, keeping Slay on one outside, and putting the guy of the week in the other position there.
But you don't want guy of the week covering Jalen Waddle. Useful says injuries are so bad for the Eagles defensive backs, they re-signed Josiah Scott.
Yes, it's been a mess this week. Also on the Eagles injury report, Lane Johnson appeared on the injury report. Smitty appeared on the injury report, Devontae Smith. So there's a lot of things. These are guys, obviously, the Eagles can't keep losing guys of that magnitude and play against this caliber of opponent.
Yeah. An interesting next-gen stats that they sent around. Jalen Hurts was pressured on 42% of dropbacks against the Jets. He has a 3-7 record when pressured on 40% of dropbacks or more, and a 25-5 record when pressured on fewer than 40% of dropbacks. Now, my first thought of here was, well, what is the overall record of quarterbacks? Right? Aren't all quarterbacks are pressured? When they're pressured more than 40% of the time. But then my second thought was, okay, so knowing what we know about the Miami pass rush, can they pressure him that much? I mean, there's Bradley Chubb and there's Christian Wilkins and Jalen Phillips, and it should be a good pass rush, but this defense is just. It's not happening for them this year. They're 27th in DVOA. The Miami defense has not become the thing people, the Miami offense is this juggernaut, and the defense that was supposed to be also juggernaut is not one.
They have injuries in the secondary as well, inconsistency in the pass rush. Think how often opponents are trying to catch up on them, by the way, where you would like sacks should just be sort of a natural residue of what they're doing there. So they don't have a lot there. And, the Eagles, Julio Jones, I guess we should mention, is now in Philadelphia, and I don't think he brings a lot to the table, but he brings like a value added when everyone's healthy, like a win more approach, where he's going to be covered by your nickel or by your safety.
Useful says, when you get to the Eagles, how many snaps does Julio Jones play before he hurts his hamstring?
7.
I mean, look, trust in the Eagles front office. It's very smart, but I don't think this guy has anything left. He's on the practice squad. They'll do a practice squad elevation, I guess. I don't think he has anything left.
He has very little left, but you're looking for somebody, especially at like the 7 to 10 yard line, where you can say, who's covering him? Can he post the guy up in the end zone? That's kind of what you're looking
Kader
at.
Kohu, probably.
Right. So that's what you're trying to get from. I ran the numbers on Julio last year. It was ugly. I mean, Brady was kind of like throwing him the screen, keeping him involved. Here's a touch. That's kind of how it was going there.
One thing I will point out, if this game is close, the Eagles have a significant special teams advantage. The Eagles are third in special teams DVOA. The Dolphins are 30th. The Eagles were also better than the Dolphins last year. Special teams is the least consistent part of football, and kicking field goals is like the least consistent part of special teams. But Elliott has been better than Sanders for a couple of years now. Like, if this comes down to that kind of stuff, the Eagles do have an advantage.
Yeah, fat load of good did the Eagles last week against the Jets when Elliott missed a 37-yarder, but the overall plan is right. Covey has been a good return man. The new punter, I don't know. He hasn't embarrassed me yet. I haven't looked up and said, "My God, what happened?" Which is what happened with every fifth punt with
Aaron Sipos. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a nice advantage to have. And again, we're keeping an eye on the injury report here, but the Dolphins are such a difficult matchup here. So this is one where I think either it turns into a Bills game and the Eagles have it all, just steamroll down the field a couple times, get one or two stops, and then they just tilt the game in their favor, or it's going to be a long evening here for Eagles fans.
The line is Eagles minus 2.5 in Philly. I am going Dolphins.
I would go Dolphins too. That 52 over is interesting. It's high but manageable. Weather should be fine on Sunday, I believe. So we're not going to have a cold.
Yeah, there's going to be some weather in New England's going to have some wind and everything, but I think Philly is okay.
I think we're clear. Saturday there's rain. I don't think there's rain on Sunday. I would lean Dolphins to bet with your head, not with your heart.
Not your heart. All right. That does it for our Week 7 preview. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to rate the show and tell your friends and spread the word about the podcast. Thank you to the folks who are watching us live. We'll be back at 11 a.m. next week, Monday and Thursday, 11 a.m. on YouTube. I am Aaron Schatz. He is Mike Tanier for the Schatz and Tanier NFL podcast. We are signing off. Everybody, enjoy Week 7.